Do what you want because a pirate is free. You are a pirate. That is the rallying cry of the emulation community. That is the Yuzu Patreon supporters. That is the Ryujink shills. That is the YouTube emulation community. You are all pirates sailing the seven seas, desperately doing everything you possibly can to evade the law because you're a bunch of filthy criminals who should be hung for your crimes, okay? You are a pirate. It's time to stop mincing words. It's time to stop making excuses. You are pirates. And the really funny thing about the Yuzu and Ryujinx thing, both of these emulators being taken down, is that people are returning to the age-old cope. The eternal darkness of the emulation cope, right? They're so far deep that they can't admit how ridiculous this sounds. We're not pirating these games, we're preserving them. That's right, Nintendo doesn't sell these games anymore, so that gives us the right to steal them, so we can preserve them for generations, completely ignoring the fact that Nintendo has an online service subscription model where all of their old games, including Japanese exclusive releases, are being released at regular intervals, right? All of this stuff has been preserved for you. It is available to the public, right, through a subscription model. So the claim that they are preserving games is nothing but a big cope. Okay, it is them seething about not being allowed to get this stuff for free. And I would argue at this stage that Nintendo's service is actually better than what the pirates offer. This is like the big thing that like Yuzu and Ryujinx don't really want to admit, but like the way Nintendo handles it, you get Japanese versions of games, you get variety, you get like all of this stuff like divided by console, neat and ready for you, right? It's tied into your online membership, right? The Nintendo Switch Online service provides a great value at an affordable price. Right? No matter how niche the game, no matter how ridiculous it is, no matter who the publisher is, like, the game is coming out on Nintendo Switch Online. Eventually, we're going to have the entire NES, Super Nintendo, N64 library on there. And what we're seeing now from the community is just desperately trying to downplay that fact. Right. This has been an issue since like the service was first unveiled, but people initially complained about the selection, hilariously complaining that they already owned these games. I thought you were preserving them for generations. So first they tried complaining about the fact that they couldn't own these games, even though they spent like the entirety of the Wii and Wii U generation complaining about the price point. First, they complain about the ownership, then they complain about the selection, and now they're kind of like trying to ignore reality in that the Nintendo versions of games offer things that are not emulatable, right? Specifically, like motion controls in games like Kirby Tilt and Tumble and online play for every game imaginable, right? In a much more varied ecosystem than anything that any emulator offers, right? The idea that emulation somehow boosts frame rates and makes games better is completely laughable and off base, right? The idea that you can extensively mod games and change them, all of that is gimmicky and doesn't result in a better product, right? You're better off just playing a new video game at that point, right? The entire emulation community is nothing but a big cope, right? It is just a method of trying to devalue the Nintendo brand and try and keep up the illusion that PC gaming is somehow better than Nintendo gaming. Because after all, with emulation, you can play every game that's ever existed. It doesn't matter if you have to pirate it. It doesn't matter if the software you're using is some proprietary software that you have to have some nerd just customize to make it playable on your rig, right? It doesn't matter that you have to pay like a Patreon to get the latest build of the emulator so you can play new Nintendo games like a couple of weeks after they come out, right? It doesn't matter. Like everything about the emulation community is just a big cope, right? There's all this stuff they don't tell you about, like, breaking encryption and getting a hold of the games. The idea that, like, everything is just available for you on PC is just a complete and total lie and really needs to be disregarded by the community as a whole because in this day and age, it is not difficult to get a hold of any major Nintendo release, right? You can buy online. You can buy through the eShop. You can get games through the Nintendo Switch Online service, right? You have all these options to get games legitimately. So why exactly would you bother with piracy? Again, there aren't that many games that pirates want to play that aren't available on Nintendo Switch already. Like how exactly are you trying to justify like pirating Fire Emblem 7 when it's right there on Nintendo Switch Online? Castlevania just got re-released. I bet a bunch of people have pirated Castlevania, even though it's readily available on Steam. Like, I don't have to pay for that. It's an old game. Like, again, these people are simply coping about their behavior. And it needs to be acknowledged that they are complete and total scum. These are people that will say and do anything to try and devalue the superior Nintendo product. They don't want to talk about the first party Nintendo games, but by claiming that they played them on their high-end gaming PCs, they never do, by claiming that they played the games and didn't like them, it's a very quick, easy way to downplay both Nintendo software, the upcoming major releases, and the hardware itself, right? Like, I don't even need a Switch to play these games. But it is nothing but a lie. And I do think people need to like bring this up and talk about this more because we saw this with the Yuzu community too when that got taken down because we were told for years that Nintendo didn't have anything on Yuzu. They couldn't take them down. They couldn't do anything to them. Everything they were doing was perfectly legal. And oops, they're gone. Like, that doesn't matter because we have Ryujinx. Oh, they're gone too. Like, that doesn't matter because it's open source. Like, it's just a big cope, right? An absolute huge cup, right? Another Metroid 2 remake, right? That was like a really highly shilled Metroid product. People gaslit themselves like, oh man, it's so much better than any Metroid 2 remake that Nintendo could make. And then they put one out that year, like, but another Metroid 2 remake was better though. And then they put out Dread. And then now they're gonna put out Prime 4 in the future, like next year, probably like in the first half of next year. Like, you're really gonna sit there and try to tell me that like, AM2R was better though? Like, no, that is like a straight up cope. Nobody believes that. Nobody cares. Nobody even plays Ori. Okay, like anybody who says Ori is better than Metroid should be laughed at. Okay, like a complete and total joke. Like, it's just absurd the lengths that these people will go to try and like avoid acknowledging the truth that yes, Zelda is better than FromSlop, Mario is better than Astrobot, like Metroid is better than Ori, right? Like again, they'll do anything they possibly can. Like, I play all these Nintendo games, but if you really were playing Nintendo games on your high-end gaming PC, you would have a lot more nice things to say about them. You would talk about the things you enjoy. You would talk about like the game, what you want to see in the future. You would talk about like, how the series has progressed. You wouldn't just sit there and try to trick people into thinking emulation is far superior than playing legitimately, right? Because that's where their focus is. That's what they always talk about. They never talk about the games themselves, and hyperfixate on the illusion, the lie, that emulation is superior to Nintendo consoles and completely legal.